Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Lacrosse the Bay podcast. That intro music was from co-host Schuyler Horn's Sea Level
Oh,
band.
you're outing me already, Billy.
I gotta throw it out there.
All right.
Today we're joined by Christian Zalewski, a native of Cold Spring Harbor, Long Island, former starting goalie at Providence College, and he's been holding it down as the goaltender for the Polish national team since 2010, Manchester, England, and is still in the pipes this summer. So that's a solid 15 years of Polish national team goalie right there. So, Christian, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me on. Good to see you guys.
So yeah, I think this is episode 2 officially for Lacrosse the Bay, after a few test runs, and Christian's our first official guest. So we're kind of going to kick it off here, just talking lacrosse, and Christian, kind of want to hear about how you picked up a stick, and growing up on Long Island, sort of what that was like. I know, Sky's from Connecticut. I'm from Massachusetts. Lacrosse wasn't really the biggest sport in Massachusetts when I was growing up playing in the 90s. It was kind of like an under the radar sort of deal. But I think Long Island, has typically been a hotbed for lacrosse. So yeah, being a kid, how did it kind of start for you?
Yeah, sure. Well, first and foremost, honored to be your first guest, first of many, I would imagine. Let's take this thing to the moon. Let's go. Yeah, I mean, Billy, appreciate the intro, and we'll definitely get into some pole and lacrosse stuff as well. But as far as my origin story, growing up on Long Island and in Cold Spring Harbor, it's generational. I mean, you're really born with a stick out there. I mean, at a young age, I was given a stick as a Christmas gift, and then very soon just put into a youth program. And we were fortunate because all of our coaches were former college players, where, I'm living in Miami now, and, you have young guys like myself, but the fathers don't necessarily play lacrosse. Where we grew up, our fathers were playing lacrosse, and so we were fortunate to have that experience right out of the gate, to learn really the fundamentals, to teach us, how to carry ourselves outside of practice, and what to do to put in that extra work. And so that was really the start of it. I mean, as far as position-wise, I started as a midfielder. It really wasn't until maybe my second year of playing, and this is probably, I don't know, kindergarten, first grade, where our goalie just didn't want to be a goalie anymore. He didn't want to get hit with the ball. And so our coach pulled the team together after practice and basically said, who's got the quickest reactions? And I was the first one to put my hand up, not knowing what the outcome would be. And he goes, "You're our goalie." And I was like open to it. I was like, okay, cool. And so they dropped a stick off for me, and a helmet and the throat guard and this old dusty chest pad. And they started shooting on me, and I wasn't afraid of the ball. I liked it, but my dad made a deal with the coach that I would split 50-50 between the pipes and then 50-50 midfield,
Nice.
just to have that dual experience. But I mean, I think game 2, they were like, yeah, we can't take this guy out. He's saving everything. And basically my fate was sealed then.
Yeah, I love it. It's like, I think that's a lot of who's not afraid of the ball. I feel like that's kind of how a lot of kids end up in there. I mean, Sky, you're a goalie too, and you're kind of working with the youth. So I don't know what your perspective is on it, but I remember same thing. When I started playing, I was maybe 7 or 8, and my neighbor Brendan Thomas, he was the one that wasn't afraid of the ball, and we threw him in the net, and kind of went from there. But Sky, how'd you end up in the cage?
I started as a midfielder in sixth grade, and then for my middle school team, we needed a goalie. And basically, I didn't have a helmet at the time, and they had all those old bucket helmets that like tied in the back, and then there were 2 or 3 Cascades available. And basically, I was like, I told my coach, I said I'll play goalie, but I want one of those nice helmets if I'm going to do it, and that's kind of how I ended up in there. I guess I wasn't afraid of the ball as well. I don't. It's interesting getting kids to play goalie nowadays. It's difficult, we don't come across a ton of goalies. Sometimes it's almost like a punishment to have the kids in there. And then also, you know, I love that your dad had you play out of the net and in the net because I think that's so important too. Sometimes I see goalies specializing so early, and you really gotta have great stick skills as well as being able to stop the ball if you're
100%.
gonna be a great player. So it's really an interesting balance, especially at the youth level.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I see, like, I'm a football wide receiver as well. Played in high school, played semi professionally for 5 years. And so, like, the skills that I learned as a midfielder translated to the football field and vice versa. And I always wanted to just be free in that sense. And I translate that to my game in the goal as well. I mean, I love getting ground balls. I love running the ball up and trying to score and really being an athlete and sort of changing the narrative to your point, Schuyler. Like, they weren't putting the most athletic kids in the goal when I was at that age when I was younger. But I wanted to be that athletic guy, be the midfielder that's a goalie. So
Love that. What I mean, let's maybe get into the goalie thing a little bit before we kick it back. I want to hear a little bit about like high school lacrosse at Cold Spring Harbor.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean the goalie position, like to me, I love it. I've been an attackman my whole life. I've never stepped in there, but it's interesting how every goalie's got their own style and kind of plays the position a little bit differently. Like Christian, you're like you said, like you're an active goaltender that's out like challenging shooters. You're like active on the clear. You're throwing full field passes. You're going coast to coast. And Sky, like thinking back to you in college, I got to play with both you guys, but got to shoot on you both too, which is kind of cool. Like you're sitting a little deeper in the cage, Sky. You got like a wide stance, and you've got these really quick reactions, and you're making a lot of saves, like reactionary saves, like kick saves, and yeah, it's just interesting how you can look at all these different, like the best goalies in the world, and they're all doing it a little bit differently. So who taught you guys how to play goalie? What was kind of like the process of really developing your game as a goaltender?
you want to
Christian,
start, Schuyler?
why don't you go first? You're the guest.
Sure. I mean, it's funny you mentioned positioning because in my experience, it was really ever evolving at every stage I went to. In my earlier days, there was the mythology of playing your arc and the 5-step arc and be a little more outside to block the angles. And so that was sort of my approach. I look at some of my film and like pictures from my younger days, and like I'm pretty like close to the arc. But as I started working with trainers as I got older, I moved myself back a little bit, and I can get into the logic why. But ultimately, I landed in a positioning where I'm more flat to the crease, and rather than getting myself extended, I'm flat and really just turning my body, not too many movements, because as you get older, the shooters get better. So any movement that a goalie makes is an opportunity for someone to find a pocket to shoot at. And so I found that sitting there and holding my ground, trailing the shooter, and just slightly turning my body would allow, it would ultimately make the shooter guess. But in terms of trailing the shooter, I found that midfielders kind of are all the same. They all use their power to shoot to that backside pipe. So if I just sit on that backside, I know I'm covering that area, and it's very hard to torque the arms to the near side. So I'm anticipating that shot, but if they shoot backside, my body's already there. So like the evolution of my fundamentals changed over time, and that just came with understanding shooters and having trainers as well. Watching a lot of film as well. That's something I pride myself in, particularly in college, because we recorded every practice, so I can see the little inconsistencies that I had. So I would practice that, and then ultimately just landed on positioning that worked best for me, and ultimately led to higher save percentages.
Yeah, I think I was fortunate to have my middle school coach, who I struck the helmet deal with, was a goalie, and so he was able to teach me some really strong fundamentals, and then through high school, I would come into contact with some goalie coaches, but really, I would kind of play year round, and I had my high school coach was just a really good shooter. John Gormley, he was an All-American at Springfield College, and he shot the ball so well. And our league as well was really, we played a lot of the Founders League schools, but we were a private day school, so I was seeing a lot of shots. I saw a lot of rubber in high school, so I just, my game evolved just from seeing so many shots, and I just kind of came up with all these different tricks to stop the ball, and really just kind of got creative, and for better or for worse, like kind of really had my own style. Like Billy mentioned, I used my feet a lot in college, and but very much reactionary. I didn't really bait or anything like that, just because I knew that I was, my strength was my quickness. So really just trying to be patient, see the ball, and make the save. And I think sometimes it's tough when you're a reactionary goalie. It can be difficult to be consistent if you're not seeing the ball. So one thing that I really would fall back on was my communication. I knew that if I wasn't necessarily having the best game, something that I could always do to contribute to my defense and make sure that we were keeping the ball in the net was just keeping everybody organized and really just dialing in my language. So that was one thing that I really leaned on, outside of saving the ball. So that's kind of how I came to develop, and also saw a lot of shots in college as well.
For sure. I like how you mentioned communication. As I was trying out for these like elite travel teams growing up, like Long Island Express, for example, I remember in the tryout there was a coach yelling from the sideline, like, "Hey, I can't hear you, I can't hear you." And I just didn't know how to communicate. And so after the game, he's like, "Look, dude, like you've got everything it takes to make this team, but if you're not a quarterback leading the defense out there, how can I select you over someone else?" And that always like stuck with me as like being such a key differentiator, and it really carried me through my whole career, because you ultimately are leading that defense, and if you can lead them correctly, then you're going to see less shots. And so I certainly pride myself on that as well. And I mean, different coaches had different things to say. I remember in high school, Coach Bond, absolute legend, still there. He's won like, I don't know, maybe 7 state championships at this point. But he said, if I can't hear you from the parking lot when I'm walking to practice, then you're not doing a good job. And then my coach in college, Coach Burdick, would say, if I can't hear you on film, then you're not doing a good job. Well, the thing was there was no sound on the film. So
Nice.
didn't know how to navigate that one, but ultimately just try to be as loud as I can.
Yeah, I mean, like you guys, I think like I've played on a bunch of teams and coached a bunch of teams, and I feel like you two are definitely like high level communicators on defense. I mean, like watching like Christian, watching you do it with the Polish guys, and that's a whole nother thing where you got some North American guys and some Polish guys, and I think the consistency of having you like in that net has really been able to help that. And like Sky, I remember you in college. you were quarterbacking that defense, in game, out of game, between plays, huddling up, and that's got to be, after stopping the ball. That's probably number two, I would say, right? And then maybe clearing, like the aspects of goaltending. It's like it'd be interesting. Like those few years when I was coaching in college, and you're kind of out there in the summer watching these guys. It's like, you might have a kid that's a pretty good ball stopper, but he's not saying anything, and then the defense is lost, and maybe slides aren't ready, or defensemen don't know where they are. There's a lot of kind of layers to it. And then, the clearing game's so important. It's like you got a goalie that's, even if he is a good communicator and he's solid stopping the ball, but he doesn't have the skills and being able to find the open guy and hit him in the clear, then you're not a complete goaltender. So, interested to hear like maybe what on the communication piece, like what are the big things that you're trying to communicate? And after that, what do you think the other kind of components are? Besides stopping the ball, which is kind of the obvious one.
Sure. So, I mean, first and foremost, you need everyone in the hole. You need all six guys down there. They need to be matched up on their guys, and then I evaluate what set the offense is in, and then I call the defense. I make sure everyone is on the same page, and I'm very avid about calling out the one slide, but most importantly the two slide, because you can't slide if you don't have a two slide. At our level, offensive players are just too skilled. If you slide and your man's not, the crease isn't covered, for example, that guy's just gonna dump it right on me. And then as far as additional items, just positioning wise, I like to get my defense like in the right path, like to cover cross feeds and things of that nature, making sure that if a pick is coming, get under or over. So there's like little terminology throughout the intricacies of the game that are important to know and be able to communicate to your team.
Yeah, I was big on specific vocabulary that was super efficient, so I was able to communicate as much as I could to the defense by saying as little as possible. So even like boiling things down to one syllable words and things like that, and just being able to communicate something. Like I would when an attackman was cutting from X, I would call that a sneak. So you say watch sneak. And that's, you can say that quickly, and the defense registers totally what is specifically happening. So I think that just things like that, and is remembering that there are some defenders that can quarterback a defense. I forget that guy's name in the PLL who played for the Redwoods. I don't know if he's still with them, but you'd watch him and he would be quarterbacking a defense, but that is very difficult to do because you have to keep your head in a swivel. Whereas in the net, we see everything, and so like you said, Billy, if you're not passing that advantage on to your defense, then you're definitely you're holding the unit back for sure, unless somebody else is picking up that slack. But it really should be the keeper.
I think this is underrated as well, is voice inflection. Knowing when to raise your voice and when not to in those calls. Like, if there's a cutter, make sure and there's a feed, make sure you yell check. Like, but there's other points in the game where you can just talk to your defender, like, hey, nudge up a little bit, be the two here. So I think that's super important, so that they know, like, when they get used to your voice and they hear you raise your voice, that means you need to tighten up a little bit more.
Yeah.
Love it. Am I missing anything? Stopping the ball, communication, clearing?
Clearing is like, I take pride in that because I see myself like as a quarterback. So like, I love nothing more than a guy running a post and just hitting a beautiful pass right over the shoulder. I take pride in that, and that started in my youth in doing wall ball, being efficient with both hands. Like, I can throw outlets righty and lefty, and it comes in handy in many instances. So yeah, to your point, like clearing is huge. at the international level, obviously there's no clock to clear, so like you do have to like temper yourself a little bit so you don't turn the ball over. You want to ensure that you're clearing it 100% of the time, but obviously there are moments where you want to hit someone on a fast break and get a quick transition goal. So every level is different, and so you just have to be aware of the situation and the type of level you're playing at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say you probably handle the ball more internationally, just because it's like, no rush, so it's going back through you a lot more. So it's, in the international game, it's like even more crucial, I think, to have a goalie that is a good decision maker and can handle the ball.
Yeah.
I think the other piece about being a goalie is just, I mean, the mental aspect of the position is just, it's so interesting. I think the thing that I always struggled with is it was something you couldn't necessarily try harder and play better. Like you obviously effort in terms of training outside and what you put into your game, but come game day, no matter if you're busting your butt, that doesn't necessarily equate to more saves, and so being able to get yourself into that mind state before the game and and create that mental foundation for consistency, it's really difficult to do. I know, Christian, I'd be curious. I feel like you have a really strong pre-game like rituals. Is that correct?
Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm superstitious, but like I do have a ritual, and it's the way I stretch. I stretch the same way every single time.
Mm.
I warm up virtually the same way every time. I take a break. I let the offensive guys shoot on the net, and then I go back and get shots right before the game.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like the mental aspect goes, there's so many layers to it.
Mm-hmm.
It can be in game. I mean, I've had some of my best weeks of practice and best warm ups. Then you get in the game and you're just
Totally.
like tanking. And oftentimes it's not your fault. It might be, but you have to stay level headed and positive because you never know if it's going to come down to you making that last save. So you just have to really fight through it. You have to have a short memory. I mean, there's also been instances where I was the starter and I lost my job, and I came back to practice and worked harder, and I may not have started that next game, but I stuck through it, and ultimately when my name was called again, I made the most of it. So like, being a goalie is really hard because there's only one of you on the field. Likely in college, there's 6 goalies. They're all competing to be the starter, and
Yeah.
so you really I just need to stay tempered, stay driven. Also try to keep things simple and not overthink it. As goalies, we tend to overthink things. If I were standing here, if I had saved it then? Da, da,
Yeah.
da, da, da. But ultimately, goldfish memory. Just get back, trust your fundamentals. Keep communicating and being a leader for your guys. Because if your team sees that you're down, you're frustrated, you're in your own head, they'll likely get in their own head and lose confidence as well.
Totally.
Yeah, you guys are something else, man. Like I think I remember, as a player, as I kind of grew into the coaching thing in my older years, I tried to play every position. So I'd pick up the long pole, or this was in late 20s, early 30s, and the one little stint I had in goal, I was I was the head coach at Hebron Academy, and on Sundays I'd drive the kids to go play box lacrosse, and we were always one goalie short, so I'd throw on the box pads, play goalie for like an hour and a half, and it was like pretty, like just high school kids playing lacrosse, but it was intense and competitive. And I remember calling you, Sky, on the ride back, like, oh man, I like stood on my head tonight, like I'm on top of the world. And then like the next week I'd be like, dude, like I just got lit up, like I let up 25 goals. I feel like, why do I feel so bad right now? And you were like, Bill, shut up, but
Welcome to
it
the
is like a
game.
whole. Yeah, I think you nailed it, Christian. You're the only one. So it's just yeah, you guys, it's a different mentality, I think, than playing any other position really. Let's jump back to high school. What was Cold Spring Harbor like, guys? So that's a Long Island school, like you said, that's won some state championships. What was your experience like playing there?
Yeah, I mean, intense to say the least. I mean, lacrosse on Long Island is like football in Texas. You have very high expectations, and the expectation is to win a state championship every single year. I mean, we knew who we would be going against since we were kids, and that was Manhasset. That was our rival. They were in our division. We knew those kids since elementary school, and ultimately, when we got to the age of varsity, we knew that's who we had to beat to go to the state championship. And so, the great thing about growing up in Cold Spring Harbor is there's just so much talent that you're able to learn from. I was on varsity as a sophomore. Adam Gittleman was the goalie ahead of me, and he was he was a year ahead of me. So I was basically his backup for like 2 years, and I had the opportunity just to watch him and really emulate a lot of my game from him. But speaking for the other positions, I mean, you've got guys going D1, and so our coaches always emphasize, watch these guys. If you're a backup, watch this guy. Figure out what he's doing, so that you can do it when you step on the field. But yeah, again, like expectations were always high. And, I'm fortunate to say that I reached the Long Island Championship my 3 years on varsity, won one state championship my sophomore year. But again, I was a backup then. I was a sophomore, but I mean, I got a lot of playing time because we were blowing teams out. So I got my experience there too.
Nice. Adam Gittleman. So Virginia, right? And then on to the pros. So that's a pretty good guy to be right behind, I would say. How did it go? Talk us through. You went to Providence, played there a lot. I think throughout especially those 3 years, right? And for a good portion of it, you were the starter. What was it like playing Division I lacrosse and being in the net for the Friars?
Sure. Well, as far as being behind Gittleman, so he was the number one recruit in the entire country, and then the Brattons, and so we were all from the same town. I was friends with Brattons growing up, and so when I got recruited to Providence, I hadn't started a game. I was recruited through my summer travel leagues, but ultimately, when I got to Providence, I mean, we were in the MAC. So we were playing the St. Joe's and Canisius's of the world. And as a freshman, I separated myself just through my athleticism and kind of like I didn't really care who was the starter. Like I didn't feel like I needed to prove anything. I just came in sort of loose and became the starter, fall of my freshman year. But unfortunately, broke my thumb right before the spring season, and so basically that was over, and I ultimately redshirted via a medical red shirt. But sophomore year came in, and I was third string. I was a little tight coming into that year. I think I was in my head a little bit from everything that I was learning at that level as far as like positioning goes. I don't know if I was completely ready for like the professionalism of college lacrosse. Like I wasn't a big weight room guy. I didn't like taking run tests. I was like, I'm a goalie. Why do I need to do this? And so I think a lot of goalies can feel the same way. Yeah,
Amen, brother.
yeah, yeah. But I had to be as fast as the midfielders at that time for whatever reason. But anyways, it ended up paying off, so it was fine. But yeah, sophomore year, we went into the spring season. I was third string goalie. Just I don't know. Again, in my own head, but I mean, as we get to the middle of the season, we were sort of interchanging between the 1 and the 2, and we played Siena, and then the 1 and the 2 were kind of getting lit up. So our coach was like, "Oh, we'll put in Christian," and I mean, I had a great game. I kept us in it, and then ultimately got the nod the next game against Bryant. First start of my career, and I pretty much ran with it from there. Going into junior year, I had the starting spot, and it was around mid-year against Brian. I got a concussion, unfortunately, and so I was out for like 2 weeks, and the guy who stepped in was a senior, and he was like fourth string his whole career. Such a good guy, Jake Goodleman. He was in Miami the other day. I was texting with him, but he stepped in and just lit it up, and he was a guy that always did the right thing. Was always a leader, and just I don't know what it was. Maybe the coaching staff just didn't have faith in him. He wasn't great in practice, but once he got in the game, he was just another level, and I think he rallied the guys around him. So he actually started the next like few games. I hopped back in at some point. So junior year was like a little bit of in and out of the lineup. And then senior year, I came in. I was like, I'm not letting that happen again. Granted, I got a concussion, whatever. But like, I just came in with a different mindset. Like you come in a little more experienced as you've had 3 years under your belt. You know what to expect from run tests to weight rooms to practice. Now you're the senior leader. Guys are looking up to you, and so I just really, took this mentality of like, this is my team. I'm going to do everything in my power to do my best. I was a starter for the entirety of that season. Had a really good year. Led the Big East in save percentage and goals against, and our defense was top in the nation. And we're playing at that point. We're in the Big East, so we went from MAC freshman year to Big East sophomore year. We had no scholarships, and we're going against Cuse and Notre Dame and Villanova and Georgetown. So we struggled a little bit, but as we got into our senior year, that's really, again, where like things sort of fell into place for me mentally and physically, and I just took it and ran with it.
You had a big game against Georgetown. I think you were like Big East Player of the Week or something. I think you guys you might have lost by a goal, but it sounds like you turned away 30 something shots. Was that a game you remember? Was that kind of like in the zone kind of deal? What was going on with that one?
Yeah, I remember it so clearly because the day before, as we're prepping, our coach was like going through stats of the practice, and we were like struggling to clear, and I that's my responsibility, and he like pointed the stat to me. He was like, "This is on you. This is unacceptable." Yada yada yada. So I was like really pissed off the night before that game, and so I went in. And I was just like, "No, fuck that noise." Like put it in the back burner, but keep it top of mind. And so I was just really determined. I mean, that I believe that Georgetown was averaging like 18 goals a game, and I was like, no, this isn't. We're at home. We're in Providence. It's like a beautiful Saturday. We've got family and friends watching this game, and so yeah, I came in very very focused. And there was a moment in that game where we came back. It was probably the greatest save in my opinion that like I've ever made. So like we needed to double to get the ball back. There's like a minute left, and this is like a lightning thunder play where goalie comes out, sends the defender. So we do that. Both defenders get beat, and the guy comes around to shoot, and I like sprinted back into the crease and like slid and like saved it with one hand. It was like, I just remember the crowd like going absolutely bonkers, and cleared the ball. We ended up not winning the game, but like I'm never happy with a loss, but like it was a memorable game just from this like that save, and like we cleared it 18 for 18 that game. So I kind of
check out the stats, coach.
Yeah, exactly.
Sky, what was your biggest one? Was it the D3 upset of the year against Endicott?
Yeah, the infamous Endicott win. Yeah, I think it was probably that one. I mean, it just there's that feeling when you're in the net. Like I think you get so locked in, and you feel like you can stop everything, and yeah, like for me, it was definitely when we beat Endicott, just because they were ranked number 8 at the time. It's our first home game. It was a team. I went to our coach's office at the time and said, because he was having me split with the other goalie, and I basically told him, I was like, I want to play this entire game, and he was Coach McAfee. He goes, listen, this is how it's going to go. They're going to play their starters for the first half. They're going to go up 10, and then they're going to put in their second stringers. We're not going to win this game. Like that's what's going to happen. I was like, and like, I couldn't completely disagree with him. I mean, I think that's what would happen a lot of times when Wheaton would play. These
Was he giving you the wizard, Coach McCaffrey? Was he
Coach
legit?
McCaffrey. That's right.
Like
What?
reverse psychology or something, or was he?
No, no, absolutely not. No, Coach McCaffrey was like, he was no, I was like he basically like kicked me out of his office because he was like, you're talking poorly about a teammate right now, like that's unacceptable, and which I was, I like and but yeah, it was. I started to heat up in the first half, and then I think we were up by one or something at halftime, and then he was just there was kind of this moment where he was like, "Oh, I guess I guess we could win this game." So he's like, "All right, you're staying," and then yeah, it was just. But we were very fortunate that we had this really awesome freshman class. I was a sophomore at the time. We had this freshman class that was just kind of they were able to shine in just like all these different positions, and we were able to pull that win out, and that was really cool. But it's kind of like whether it's a win or a loss. I think as a goalie, like going back to it, you have these games where you are just one with the ball like the entire game. And I know for athletes, like the game slows down, or like I've been playing other sports and doing other things where things slow down, but especially in the net, that ball is moving so fast.
Yeah.
It's even more so. Like I feel like you become Neo in the Matrix, and it's just it's really it's indescribable. And I think that's kind of the cool thing about being a goalie, right? Is you have the highest of highs, being that feeling, and then also the lowest of lows in terms of wow, like that game like is kind of on me because I let in some really soft goals, so
Yeah, that in the zone thing, I feel like takes on almost another level with the goalie. I feel like you can be in the zone. Um, I mean, like thinking back, like have had some games where it was like I felt like everything I was shooting was going in, and you're just feeling it. But when you see a goalie that's just saving everything, it's like it's something else. It's cool.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm recalling an interaction I had with this gentleman by the name of Scott Marr. He was affiliated with Scotland Lacrosse. Older gentleman, but I met him in 2010 in Manchester, and we were just talking, and he said, "You know what the secret to being a goalie is? Making him not shoot." And I didn't understand that,
whoa.
but I started to learn like guys will second guess you if they know you are a solid keeper because they don't want to turn the ball over. So, there's so much that goes into that. But I don't know, that quote just resonated with me for so long. And it's like if you're loud, well, the other team's gonna think this guy's on his game. If you're communicating and you're shouting and then you get that first save, like kind of the whole vibe shifts, and they started thinking like maybe I shouldn't take this shot because this guy's gonna save it.
Is that Scott Marr, the University of Albany coach?
No, not him, not
No,
him.
not that Scott Marr.
No.
He's Polish.
He's half Polish. I remember good transition. Let's go Polish lacrosse. I mean, I met Scott Marr at in Israel, Christian. Me and you were both playing for the Polish team, and man, I was with Callan Robinson's sister at the USA Canada game at halftime, and she knew Scott Marr, and he was coaching the Haudenosaunee. It was him and Brett Bucktooth, and they just kind of like started talking, and I was just standing there like decked out in my Polish stuff, and he was like, "Hey," and like just shook my hand. He was like, "I'm half Polish." I'm like, "We gotta hook you up with some gear," and it was cool because when because I ended up being the head coach for the next World Games in San Diego. And before them, I reached out to Scott Marr and just said, "Hey, like met you in Netanya. Now you're half Polish," and ended up setting up a scrimmage with the Haudenosaunee over in San Diego, which was pretty cool. I think for me might be like kind of one of the highlights of my lacrosse life was getting to play against them. It was pretty awesome. But yeah, Christian, like so you first time Poland was ever in a World Games was in Manchester, England in 2010. Which 15 years ago, pretty wild that you're still in the pipe. So I want to hear a little bit. I guess one, what was it like that first time in Manchester? Just from what was less teams, or what was the how is the world lacrosse scene kind of shifted over these 15 years? I don't think there's a lot of guys like you that can say they've been a part of it all the way through. And then two, after that, like how the heck are you keeping how are you still making it happen as a goalie? 34, 35, 34,
Just turned 35.
35. So yeah, let's hear about kind of like the what it was like back then, and then like how you're keeping it rocking into your mid 30s.
Sure. I mean, I remember 2010 like it was yesterday. It was such an incredible experience. I mean, it was the way I was introduced to pulling lacrosse was through my head coach at Providence. And I forget what, I don't know, we were like picking up gear or something like that. And I was like, I'm Polish. He's like, you're Polish? I'm like, you couldn't tell from my last name. But he was an assistant. He was supposed to be an assistant coach of the coaching staff for this team. He said, well, we're having a tryout at Providence College over the summer. Like, come and try out. And I said, absolutely. And went and tried out. But I actually had the flu that whole weekend. I had like 102 fever. And this guy, Dave Katowski, Long Island guy. He had tried out defender and legend on Long Island, Long Island Lizard, former Long Island Lizard player. And he was like, look, man, you're going to get one opportunity at this. Just, I know how sick you are, but just get out there and do whatever you can. And like, I had a pretty good tryout despite the circumstances, and made the team. And it was communicated to me that like, hey, like there's not a whole lot of fundraising here. Like all U.S. guys need to do their own fundraising. So threw a little event at my house, got some donations, but ultimately, yeah, when we got to Manchester, I remember like, I don't know, they tell you like don't sleep when you land or else your whole trip's gonna be messed up. And I fell asleep, but someone knocked on my door. They're like, hey, the Polish guys are here. Like, I don't know, when we met them, it was almost like we were just like best friends, like instantly. Like these guys were so cool, and they were just lax rats. They were just asking me so many questions, and like we just had the most amazing time. And to your point about like how lacrosse was then to where it is now, like that world championship, I would equate it more to like it was a little more relaxed. Like the venue was very cool in the sense that there was this like beer garden in the middle of everything, so you can like go get beers and interact with our teams and watch other games. And so like all the teams like talked to each other, got to know each other, they traded items and things like that. And I would say like from then to 2023, like I rarely interact with anyone from other teams unless I actually know them. There's not really that camaraderie there anymore, unfortunately. But also guys like aren't drinking like after their games. It's like a little more serious now than it was back then. I think there were 30 teams, if I'm not mistaken. We finished 14th in the world. Like we had some absolute studs on that team. Colin Jessen being one of them, who was a team member in our last world championship. But I mean, in terms of the growth of Poland lacrosse, I can definitely get into like the Poland Lacrosse Foundation and everything. But I'm blanking on what was your second question. How do I like stay with it at my age?
Yeah, I mean, I
That is
think
exactly the question.
yeah, you're the oldest. Well, actually, we'll see kind of like how this roster shakes out, but I'm thinking you're probably going to be the elder statesman on the team. I guess it was Colin in San Diego, and I think the torch has been passed. So yeah. I mean, as a goalie, I wish I could still play, but my legs would fall off or break in half. So what's the secret to staying on top of your game into your mid 30s?
I think you would be just fine, Billy.
I wish.
The secret's pizza and Chipotle, to be honest with you. You gotta get those carbs. No, but I mean seriously, like you have to stay active, and I've been fortunate that when I was living in New York City, I was playing 4 seasons of lacrosse on various teams, and then here in Miami, even more blessed because the weather's beautiful year round. So I'm playing paddle, I'm playing golf, I'm playing tennis, and then the lacrosse community is absolutely incredible here. We're actually in season right now, but there's lacrosse literally every every week throughout the entire year. We do open runs on Wednesday nights. Generally, we have crossover games on weekends. There's ULACs in the spring and the fall, and then boxing. So I would attribute boxing to a lot of my stamina. I think that's the best workout that you can get in 1 hour. It's footwork, it's core, it's hand speed, it's mental, and I mean perfect if you're a goalie. Like get into boxing 100%. So I mean for me, I've just stayed active. I stretch a lot. I work out a lot. I just try to keep my body right because I'm driven to make it to the Olympics. Like I don't feel old. I don't think I'm old. I just try to do everything I can because I have goals for myself.
Hell yeah. The drive. I mean, the drive's got to be probably number one. I would think. If you want to keep doing it at a high level, and then everything else kind of follows after that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so let's. I feel like we got to touch on this kind of Polish lacrosse foundation a little bit. So one of the amazing things I think about lacrosse right now is that it's growing all over the world, and like Christian said, it's an Olympic game now. I was in Utica for the World Box Championships in September, and as the general manager, I got to go to I guess they call it General Assembly. Every time there's a world event, a World Lacrosse event, they have this General Assembly. One representative from each team goes. Susan Redfern, who was the president at the time, she just stepped down, and Jim Shear, who's the CEO. They sort of spoke about where they see lacrosse in the world right now, and how they're kind of strategically shifting their plan, where these past 15 years they've really been trying to get lacrosse grassroots going in different countries all over the world, and now they've reached a point where it is at least got a base in a pretty solid base in 50 or 60 countries, and now they want to level up, and kind of get lacrosse even more established in those places. The way the Olympics is going to work is there's either going to be 6 or 8 teams in the LA Olympics in 2028. We'll find out soon. Hopefully it's 8. I think that's what everybody believes it should be. And then if it's a successful event, which I think everybody knows that it's going to be, in 2032 in Australia, they'll expand that pool to be more like basketball or hockey or some of the sports that have been established in the Olympics for a long time. So I think it's good that it's really starting to become a world recognized sport. So I mean you've done a lot, Christian, on the North American end of things. There's a lot of Polish people in the States and Canada of Polish descent, me, myself and you included. Like, my mother's family's from there. And I think a lot of North American people of Polish descent are really proud of their heritage. They've had it passed on from their parents and their grandparents, and a lot of them are good lacrosse players. And you've kind of bridged and connected Poland and these North American lacrosse players with Polish heritage. So if you can, talk a little bit about that. I know it's been a big part of, you've put a ton of time and energy into it. So what's that been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it's been a blessing, and I'll take you, from the beginning. Ultimately, working with Kyle Plumley, who was our assistant coach in 2014 and then head coach in 2018. In order to fundraise for the World Championships in Netanya, we needed to figure out, one focal point that's going to draw attention to the pole and lacrosse community, and we recognize that there's a gap between North America and Poland, and so we really wanted to bridge that for a number of reasons. One is fundraising for local and national teams. Two is to increase the skill level of players in Poland, and then three, bring those with Polish heritage closer to their roots. And so by forming our 501c3 nonprofit, the Pole and Lacrosse Foundation, that's exactly what we look to do is, and it's been amazing. So we have a number of different tournaments throughout the year where we have select heritage teams. Our Super Bowl is really the Heritage Cup, where as of last year, for the first time, we had a team for every age group from U13, U15, U18, and then men's. We had only had a men's tournament team for the last 4 or 5 years. So it just shows the growth that we've had with the foundation, as well as the interest of North American players getting involved with not only their heritage, but in Poland. And so the goal is to bring those North American players over to Poland, whether that be to coach, participate in national teams, or simply just get over there, play in some tournaments, get to know the guys, teach them a few things, and then as well fundraise, because we've got these big trips coming up. San Diego was expensive, Israel was expensive, and so I mean the foundation at this point, we have over 500 members within our database, and then ultimately a number of different traveling heritage teams from field lacrosse to box lacrosse. We've been a participant at the World Junior Box Lacrosse Championships that have been in Canada and Buffalo, and a lot of the people that have played on our heritage teams, our junior box teams, have gone on to then play on our national team. So it's been great to evaluate the players, but ultimately get them in the fold and ideally get them over to Poland. And I think it's worth mentioning as well, our goal is not just to get U.S. guys or North American guys over to Poland. We want to get Polish guys playing college lacrosse in the United States. I mean, we have some absolute studs in Poland who obviously are not going to get the exposure unless at a major lacrosse tournament, but you're leveraging our resources and our connectivity, we can tap into coaches at the college level and put them on their radar. So that's a goal for me. We haven't yet. We've been close. A lot of it just comes down to money and things of that nature, but hopefully we can get one of these guys in a college soon.
The women have had a few, which has been pretty cool to see. There's some Polish girls playing in the NCAA, and definitely you're right. There's been a few, definitely some guys that have been good enough, no question, from Poland to come over here and could have made some noise in the NCAA. It just hasn't fallen, but I'm looking forward to that first one. I think for me the coolest thing has been since going over there. For me, the first time was 2017, but some of these young kids in Poland that are starting younger and picking up sticks are growing up with it, and they're looking pretty good. And there's a lot of really strong Polish lacrosse players. I know soon we're going to get one of those guys over here to play in the States. But I think worth mentioning too, this summer the European Championships, which are going to be a qualifier for the next World Championships, are going to be played in Poland. So I think it's going to be a good opportunity to grow the game in Poland. It's going to be a big event, around 30 teams, and having it on home soil is going to be something special. So I think the whole Polish lacrosse community is really excited about it and looking forward to it, and I'm hoping that it can jolt lacrosse over in Poland this summer. So we'll see. I know everybody's pretty psyched about it. So that's coming up July 10th to 19th, the European Lacrosse Championships. So mark that on your calendar if you're listening to this.
Can't wait. And shout out to the women's side as well. They've done a really good job, and to see a number of different players that are playing, college lacrosse in the U.S. That's amazing. We are also bringing our first women's team to the Heritage Cup this year, so that's
All right.
definitely a channel that we're looking to develop as well. So if there are any female Polish players out there in the U.S., come join us.
What do you think, Sky? We're almost at an hour here.
Yeah, I think maybe we could do like a little lightning round or something like that.
I love it.
So here I can fire off some lightning round questions. Okay, favorite place to get a pizza?
Ruby Rosa, New York City.
How you
Okay.
doing?
How you doing? How you doing? Preferred goalie head?
Eclipse. The
Eclipse.
old version, the original version. They
Okay.
don't even make them anymore.
Are you like hoarding old Eclipses to still use these days?
I've got a few. I have upgraded to like the 2.0 version, which I like. But
Okay.
yeah, Eclipse all day. And I
Okay.
also, as far as the pizza goes, I do a disservice to my hometown pizza spot, Rosas. Anyone who knows me knows I love this place called Rosas. I go home. That's the first place I go to. So shout out Rosas.
Okay. Got it. Best lacrosse memory, eighth grade and under.
Eighth grade and under. Wow. Eighth grade and under. That's that's a long time ago. I don't know. Eighth grade and under. I think it was just bringing my lacrosse head to show and tell in like fifth grade. I loved like Loyola colors for whatever reason, so my head was dyed Loyola colors. So yeah, I don't know. That was it.
Nice.
Go Hounds.
Go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Favorite music album?
Thug Motivation 101, Young Jeezy.
Okay. All right. Just kind of like to like an addendum to that one. What's your favorite type of music to get you in the zone before a game?
Yeah, I like 90% rap, 10% rock.
Okay. Favorite movie?
Saving Private Ryan,
Oh wow.
classic.
And we'll finish. Favorite color?
Blue.
Okay. All right. Bill, you got any you want to add to this?
No, I love it. That was awesome. That's got to be a staple. Lightning round. Love it.
For sure. Cool. Well, Christian, you're a legend. I think it's so cool to see you still in the pipes and seeing you lead the lead, domestically, in the lacrosse community, but also internationally. And I think that's really special. And also just to see that longevity for your career and that it's still going. That's really awesome. So we appreciate you being on here, sharing some knowledge with the listeners, and excited to see you between the pipes this summer.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on. I mean, it's an honor to represent Poland for my family, for the country, and looking forward to changing some history at the European Championships this summer.
I love it. Polska, baby.
Polska.
All right, that's it.